To introduce myself, I'm Anne-Marie Conlon and I'm Head of Economic Development with Donegal County Council, and as part of that remit, I am also over tourism development in the county from a county council perspective. So today I'm really delighted to welcome a distinguished panel. We have Ásta, who is the CEO of Iceland Tourism Cluster. We have Liesa Johnston from the Strangford Lough Tourism Cluster. And we also have with us today Murtagh from Westmeath Partnership Development. So we're delighted to have, Westmeath Community Development. So we're delighted to have the various speakers with us today. So without further ado, what I want to do is I want to introduce you to Ásta Kristín. Ásta is the CEO of the Iceland Tourism Cluster and one of the leading cluster managers in Europe. Iceland Tourism Cluster is working to promote competitiveness and recovery in the tourism industry, and as well as providing a cooperative forum for members and businesses. So I'm just going to hand over straight away now to Ásta, and following Ásta's presentation, we'll then have a panel discussion with the remaining members of the panel, and there will be an opportunity for people to ask questions and to engage in the discussion. So at this point, I'm just going to hand over to Ásta.
Thank you so much, Anne. And I'm just going to put the timing on, so we will keep the track on time. So nice to be with you here today. Actually, it's a holiday in Iceland, so it's really good to be in the office today and share my holiday with you here. As you see on my screen, this is not a fire in the back of Reykjavik. This is our volcano just being cute. And this is actually not this close to the city either. This is just the eye that sometimes fools you. Yeah, and just in the beginning, I wanted just to share where we are located. Of course, we are that close to you that I think that this crowd knows where we are, but it always surprises me when people have no idea, and why does that surprise me? I don't know, because we are only just 350,000 inhabitants in Iceland. Still, we think everyone knows where we are located. This is, of course, a dream location, as you see. This is the map from our airline, Icelandair. This is the routes that they were taking just a few years ago. And hopefully they will all be here again, these routes. But actually Iceland sits like a hub in the middle of the ocean between Europe and the United States, and has been a really important hub for these transportations, but also the tourism industry has been like building up really fast from 2010. And in 2010, we had about 500,000 guests visiting Iceland. And in the 2018-19, we had over 2 million people coming to visit Iceland and stay in Iceland. So I would not say that the growth was all time sustainable. It was a fast line up. So we needed a lot of infrastructure, we needed a lot of people, we needed to do a lot of things really fast to keep up with this growth. And we have learned a lot these past, almost 12 years. So in the beginning of 2013, people started to talk about how we could try to do this business in tourism in a more sustainable way, with more players around, and all the groundwork for the Icelandic tourism cluster came from the grassroots, came from the businesses themselves. This was not a top-down government issue that now everyone needed to play together or needed to find ways to do things in a better way. This came from the industry themselves. And the tourism cluster in Iceland and all of the clusters actually in Iceland, they have been more or less driven in the private sector. Now there is a shift in a way that the government has seen the value. So I will maybe divide my talk a little bit into why the cluster matter and why the formats of clusters are a really good tool to use to speed up growth and to speed up really necessary tasks into the future. And then in the second part, I will maybe talk more about how it works and how I, as a manager of the cluster, work with my members, work with participants in our projects, and so on. So I will try to focus on those two things, and then in the end, you can, of course, ask me questions about if something is not clear. But the projects, and we are really project-based. We are not for profit. We are associations that when we receive money or fundings, it always goes straight back into the industry. And our projects, they need to involve innovation, value creation. We strive to improve professionalism and quality in the sector, and also, of course, strengthen sustainability and responsibility in the tourism sector. Our main programs and projects of the cluster, they are responsible and sustainable tourism. We have had a lot of different workshops and different curriculums around circular economy, sustainability, regarding the SDGs, and helping the business owners finding the best solutions in how to make good goals and measurements when we talk about sustainability. Accelerating innovation, of course, there we go on in the depth with the business owners themselves in educating, and they are also having a lot of opportunities to have this peer-to-peer moments, and that is really important, and especially when times are hard, like now. We are hosting workshops and trying to feed this competence of the businesses. Then we have a focused eye on travel tech and digitalization in the tourism sector, because that is really important. And now I think that we are facing a new time where this digitalization and all the travel tech and tech in everything is crucial to get back better. And also we are fostering the ecosystem and building a strong network between different stakeholders in the cluster. And this is, and don't freak out, this is not a really, this is a picture that is more or less in Icelandic, but I also have it in English. But this is just to show you our cluster map, how we map our members, why it's important to look not only on the core businesses of tourism, but also on the service side. Who is providing services to the tourism sector? Why do we need to look into that? Who is providing education, training, and researches into the tourism sector? Why do we need to have a really good contact with them? The DMOs, which we call destination management and marketing organizations, because it's really important to have the management part there strong as well. It's not all about marketing, but management is a really strong force there. We need to have a really good cooperation with public authorities and the government, of course, the municipalities, all the public institutes that are really important for tourism and the growth of tourism. Then we have all kind of related clusters that we also need to have a really good contact with, because tourism is kind of an industry that goes, you know, like a river through so many other industries, and tourism is dependent on many of them, but many of them is also dependent on tourism. So this goes both ways. And then there are these industries that are like, have this direct beneficial of tourism. And there we really need to have this focus on, like retail and all kind of, and I have this here in English as well. So, and you can have this slides. This is a map that we, and this is so important when you are mapping up the ecosystem, because clusters always exist. You don't, you will never just build a cluster. You build the ecosystem. You map the ecosystem, and then you build the cooperation from the ecosystem. So it's really important that you map out the stakeholders, you know the actors on the playground, you know who is important for whom, and the value chain. It's so complex. So it's so important that you know who you're talking to and in what terms you are doing that. And now, like when we are facing this pandemic and we are facing zero tourism, kind of, we are facing a really hard hit in the economy for every, for everywhere in the world. It's not like it's a special thing for Iceland, of course, it's everywhere in the world. We have kind of figured out that, and all, the government all over have figured out that tourism really matters. It doesn't only matters for the business owners in tourism, it also matters for our societies, and it brings value into our daily lives. You go to restaurants, you use so many of different varieties of tourism or the industry based every day. So when it goes away, you kind of feel it in your bones. So the question is, why did the cluster matter in the beginning? When the mapping started in 2013, then the need was because of the growth, because of so many loose ends that people didn't really know where to run. So we really needed this, this form, or this kind of glasses to look through together, to find the right ways to do things. People were talking about over tourism in Iceland in 2015 because the growth was so rapid, and the business owners, they really needed a platform to stand on, to be able to say, we are doing things responsible. We are not here in this to ruin our nature or to get as many as we can, just to have money from you. So the platform then, when the growth was so rapid, was more or less to have this platform to stand on, to have projects that they could connect to, so they could make this image and keep together the professionalism in tourism. So, and why now? Because I think actually that clusters all over the world, and not only in tourism, has found out that this time cluster have never been as relevant in our ecosystem, no matter what ecosystem it is, because it helps you to bring together the right stakeholders from all over every value chain you have, to focus on what is important now and what we need to do really fast to get to the point that we can start some kind of, maybe never the norm that we knew, but some kind of platform to stand on and agree on some ground that we want to stand on. So this can fasten up our growth. This can bring on more professionalism. This can bring the people back together, and this and just also to show why it is important, maybe not to go back to an unsustainable growth, but to go back to having a good value in tourism. And in 2019, there were over 35% of foreign currency revenues coming from tourism. So it's hugely important for Iceland to get all the jobs back, to get the value back into our ecosystem and back into our economy, of course, because we are depending on having revenues from tourism. But also to show you, and this is also in Icelandic, so sorry, but you can relate to the picture, either you can see the icons and you understand them. But this picture is actually to show where and how tourism connects to so many different activities, and both direct and indirect influences that it has into our societies. So we are now in our phase to bring together everything that we have learned for the last 5 years, because our tourism cluster has been up and running since 2015. We started the mapping in 2013, and then there was this formal thing of the organization in 2015. So now we have been looking back and what we have learned this 5 years, what we have done, what impact the cluster has. And this picture is to show why tourism matters for Iceland, how it goes through the veins of all the ecos or all the economy in Iceland, and how much value in each sector it brings. So this is just to show you why tourism matters and why it matters to have a strong form around it. And this slide is more or less just to show you the actions for COVID-19 for the government side. I'm not going to dwell on that, but I think in the recovery and the restart of tourism, it's hugely important that the actions for COVID was taken seriously, that we have at this situation good, and people will look at the destinations where they will travel as safe and secure. So of course it is really important and relevant for tourism that the situation of COVID is good. But now maybe to switch over to the cluster and what it has done. And I'm just going to check on my timing. Okay. I'm good. We made, actually, it's a year ago where we made this action plan and restarting tourism, because we knew that, of course, there would always need to be some plan for it, because everything was shut down, of course. And what we, from the beginning, wanted to do was to try to look at this from the other side. To try to look at what we had been doing and what we could possibly learn from that. Was everything good that we were doing, or was there a room for improvement that we could use this time now to think about when we hit the restart button again? So this action plan more or less was involved in talking about things that we really wanted to change, talking about things that we knew nothing about at the moment, because nobody knew anything, talking about all kind of industry related issues that needed to have a focus, and helping the business owners, of course, figuring out what they needed and wanted to do. So we were kind of moving from this survival mode that everyone was in, trying to push people into this transformational thinking and mindset, because of course this was a shock. You didn't have any revenue streams, you didn't know anything about the future. When was it over? When would something change? So we were in this restart tourism project, always trying to crop into the mindset of people that we needed to keep in shape. We needed to keep everyone in some kind of a mindset that we could be ready to adapt and restart. So this was put into these 3 categories, kind of. We had this unplugged recorded Zoom meetings where we were just talking about what everything in a really informal way, and we put it out in, I think you can find it on YouTube. This is this is not high classified talks. These are just talks with peers talking about all of these issues. Then we had a lot of webinars and workshops with our members, but also we opened up our memberships to almost everyone that wanted to participate. Then
certainly raise them with Ásta when she comes back in. But maybe I know one of the things I suppose that we were hoping to do as part of today's discussion was to have a panel discussion with Ásta, Liesa, and Frank, who's also joining us here this morning. So maybe if we just kind of move into that to an extent, and I think we can come back then to Liesa, or sorry, to Ásta when she returns to the meeting. So I suppose really one of the first areas that we were I suppose really the first thing is to kind of maybe comment on Ásta's presentation too. So far, I feel it's a bit, I don't know if it's right to ask to comment when she hasn't actually finished her presentation, but maybe just for Liesa and Frank, maybe just to give their thoughts just in terms of some of the issues that I suppose really some of the key points or something that resonates with them from Ásta's presentation. And Liesa, I might just go to you first.
Sure, no problem. Okay. I'm very happy to do so. So I think one of the things that's striking for me whenever we look at Iceland is actually whenever I do a bit of a calculation here, the population of Iceland is pretty much the same as the area within which the destination we're operating. So we cover Ards and North Down council area and also Newry Morning Down. And if you add those two populations together, we come up with about 340,000. So it's interesting that we're nearly the same size as Iceland. And they're bringing, 500,000 visitors across every year. And similarly then to Iceland as well, we are also, a grassroots kind of bottom-up approach. We were born out of the motivation around the providers in the Portaferry region in particular that realised that really working together, was so important. And that was kind of structured around Portaferry regeneration as well. And that was a couple of years before they actually started their whole cluster initiation, started to speak into maybe public sector in terms of what they wanted to do going forward. And I think that's really important. And definitely, through the research that I've looked at, is something that we should always be mindful of, is to put the businesses front and center. And the Portaferry regeneration, it was all about the place, not necessarily about profit. And that's a core to what we take forward then over the period of time we've been working with them. Another thing I'd like to kind of call out as well in the presentation is this notion of a living organism, and very much what Ásta was talking about there with the cluster map and the ecosystem within which we operate as a cluster. We're not institutionalized, and I think COVID last year showed how fragile the industry actually is, and that it is a living thing, and we all rely on one another, and that's something that resonates with us as well. So I suppose going forward and to give over Frank some time to talk here as well, I can see very much alignment with what Iceland are doing and what our hopes, dreams and aspirations are for the Strangford Lough cluster. And we're moving very much more to that kind of regenerative approach to tourism, which is focused on, well-being and wealth and welfare of the people and of the place, and kind of changing that mindset about what tourism was before and how we kind of go forward and how we see and do tourism for the future.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Liesa. I see Ásta's back with us, but what I might do before I come back to Ásta is I might just ask Frank maybe just to come in on some of the, I suppose really just in terms of Ásta's presentation to date and points that resonate with himself from his own area of work.
I suppose what would jump out at me is in terms of what Ásta was showing, and I appreciate it was in Icelandic, but the icons gave us a good idea. But I suppose from my point of view, it's really interesting to see that in its broadest context. I mean, one of the concerns we would have always is that we're particularly with tourism when. If it's operated in a silo as such, and it's a really good example in terms of, we say, where different players and the different partners come into play, and how that can benefit the whole tourism ecosystem in our area. I know that we would tend to look at a smaller kind of geographic area by the nature of our work, but it's how that ties in then with the much broader areas. It was interesting as well in terms of the, I think Ásta was about to go into it in more detail, was the community involvement, which is probably something that from an Irish perspective that we have been not as good as certainly from a local level as regards bringing in the community engagement into our tourism clusters. It seems to be that sometimes can be reactive to what has been there rather than being led by the community. So I'd be interested to hear more in relation to that from Ásta's presentation.
Thanks very much, Frank. Thank you. Ásta, we might just go back to you. Do you want to finish off the presentation, Ásta? I'm not sure what happened there. It was obviously a technical hitch.
This was really strange. I have never experienced this before. And we have we have been on. No, I think actually my presentation was almost over. I was just going to show you one slide because this relates to what Frank was saying about the society and how we are going to operate into the future of tourism, because we need to shift from following everything and trying to follow up and run around tourism. We need to make tourism this tool that we are using, and we are controlling what we want and what we need to have. So our platform for responsible tourism has been this 4 pillars. People that sign this plats, they kind of promise to do this. And that is the demonstrate respect for nature and ensure the safety of our guests and treat them with everything good that we have, respect the rights of employees, that is really important, and have a positive impact on the local community where they operate. And that is a huge part of this, how we take the local communities into this equation, how we that the local inhabitants, they are on our side and they really want this, and we are not pushing it to them. We are pulling from them what they want and what they need and what we want to have into the future, because the nature is not something that only our generation can use and then it's just over. We need to think about this for the generations that are coming. And also because I think I have forgot to tell about it earlier, because I have had many questions about how our business case is. I mean, where do we have our money from? What is like the revenue streams that we work from? And in the beginning, because I was talking about why then and why now, in the beginning, we had about 80% of all our income from the businesses, from the private sector. Now we have about 40% of our income or revenue from the members. We have a 40% from special projects that we are building up, and people pay for their participations, and we had all of the municipalities participating and helping the businesses take part, for example, in this project, where we are trying to keep the business owners everywhere in Iceland in shape. So we have had over 100 companies participating in this special project. So it's just like you're going to play a really important football game after 16 weeks, and then you need to get everything into shape, and you need to learn to run faster, and so on and so on. So the government, the municipalities all around Iceland, the sector itself, have all come together to make this happen, and to try to use this time to get into this kind of 3 focus areas: the sustainability, the innovation part that is so important to think about now, and then the digital solutions and the travel tech that we really need to shapen up. So I think that was where I wanted to stop before I lost contact.
Okay, thanks very much, Ásta. Thank you. And I suppose maybe I might just go back to one question that's here in the chat here, and it's really, and it kind of links in and it follows on nicely to your presentation. And I suppose really it's, what advice would you offer to a new cluster manager that's looking at developing a cluster or working with a tourism cluster? What would your own advice be, just in terms of what the first step should be and what their focus should be?
Yeah, I think it's so important every time when you are going out there into the field to try to figure out the needs. What are the challenges that are that the people are facing, and try to make the right value proposition for that group. Of course, you need to start with the mapping. You need to start to understand the ecosystem. I mean, why is there a need? What could be done, and how should we do it? So if someone is having this ideas on that, then the first step should be to try to identify the need for it, who should be the main stakeholders, try to get people on board with you that are that share your passion. You need to be passionate about this, because this is driven, you know, in the start you need to really have a good focus on what you really want to accomplish with it.
Okay.